you're having a fantastic day. Welcome back to another episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast. This is a special one for us. This is exciting because rather than, as we've normally been doing, talking about a specific episode of a show like Andor, which we've been covering for the past 3-ish months or so, today, the title of the episode, as you've probably seen from clicking on it, is something along the lines of why we love Star Wars, which is one that I think for us is a really fun one to cover because, if you're watching the video on YouTube or if you're listening to the podcast on Spotify or Apple, you likely probably have some love for Star Wars as well. So we're just kind of doing this one out of a pure love for Star Wars. But before we hop into that, first of all, let me ask you, Joey, how is your day going? How have you been doing this week?
It's today's been pretty good. This week has been for some reason kind of slow. I don't know why. I think I've been waiting for us to record for a little bit. So we had our first I guess podcast real meeting that we had over the weekend to talk about over what we're going to do over the next month. So I've just been thinking about recording here. I just want to record all of them at this point and let's just do it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Let's just stay up till 6 in the morning and record like 5 episodes tonight.
Yeah, that's if we could do that, that would be fine. No, but so yeah, I've been looking forward. You sent me these questions to really think about, so I've just been excited to start this up. In the meantime, I've just been keeping busy with trying to finish this Fortnite battle pass that
There you
ends
go.
at the end of the month, end of the week. So, but yeah, so a little bit of a distraction there. But no, I've been doing well. How you doing?
Good, been great. This week seems to like be flying by for me, honestly, and it's hard to believe tomorrow is already December. Like, that's crazy, man. And like you said, we met, and part of the reason for that was to kind of map out the month of December, in terms of what we wanted to do, podcast wise, because December is like a very brief dry spell, I guess, if you will, of Star Wars content before we get just this torrential downpour of 2023 content, which I'm very pumped, very excited for. Bad Batch will be probably the next thing we cover show wise, in full here on the channel. We may do. Now I'm already forgetting what we what we planned out, but I think we've got a few snippets of some other shows that we'll sprinkle in throughout the month of December. But I guess the next new show we'll be covering is Bad Batch at the beginning of January. So we'll be kicking off 2023 with a bang.
What a crazy way! That's a weird year to even hear.
20,
2023 seems so
2023.
far in the future, but it's literally a month away.
We are literally living in the future. We're now past how far Back to the Future took place in, which is kind of funny to think about. Um, and before we hop into this first set of Star Wars related questions, I just want to remind everyone that if you want to tweet at us or send us an email, either of those options are available. You can tweet at us at Hoth Hangout, over on Twitter. Or if you want to send us a message or a question or anything Star Wars related via email, hothhangout@gmail.com. You can reach us there. Joey also briefly mentioned the Fortnite Battle Pass. We both stream over on Twitch. If you are interested in following us there and checking out some of our gaming content, that's also an option. And then, of course, the podcast channel on Spotify and Apple and on YouTube, where we, I think, are closing in on 50 subscribers. So shout out to all the YouTube subs. Appreciate y'all.
Let's go. And also, we have a video that actually topped 1,000 views.
Yeah,
Probably within the past like half hour, maybe.
yeah. I think when we checked right before the pod, it was at 1,001. So shout out to all the viewers and listeners of Hoth Hangout who watched our first ever video to go over 1,000 views. That was a pretty cool milestone for us. So
Yes,
thanks,
absolutely.
guys.
Thank you.
All right, why we love Star Wars. This is I guess first of all, let me say this is a fun opportunity for us, but also at the same time, I think when we were talking about this, we were both like worried that we were just gonna kind of like ramble about why we love Star Wars the whole time, which was part of the reason we kind of like we're like we should probably have some sort of outline or prompt for this. Because if you don't set a time limit on Joey and I for a why we love Star Wars podcast, we would literally go for a couple hours. So
Yeah, I don't know if 24-hour streams are a thing on YouTube, but I think we might be able to fill that time.
Exactly. Yeah. um, so the thing we're gonna start off with, which I think is very it makes a lot of sense is our first memory of Star Wars, or that maybe that first moment why why we chose to watch it, or whether we remember like what the occasion was when we watched it, and what it was about that moment that really made us fall in love with Star Wars as a franchise. Do you want me to start? Or do you want to start?
You go first. You go first. I want to hear your story.
Okay, okay.
Because yeah, we don't know each other's stories at all, so this is all new to us as well.
Yeah,
So
I
this is
mean, I think I like the only thing you know about my story of why I started loving Star Wars is the movie I watched first, which I will also include as part of my story. And I'll come back to that because I'm a little bit ashamed of what movie it is. um, but the
episode 9.
yeah, no offense to anyone out there who watched the sequels before the originals or the prequels, but man. Anyways, so my first Star Wars memory, I was probably I'm trying to like map this out because um I was born between the time when the original trilogy and the prequels came out. And so I was probably when episode 1 came out, I think I was probably like 4, 3 or 4. And so I was still like too young to have known what Star Wars was. But I remember episode 2 coming out more concretely. And I remember when I was probably about 6 or 7, which probably would have been because episode 2 was 2002, I want to say. So I think this was probably 2003 ish was when this would take place, where we had just gotten a box set of VHS tapes. I don't know if my dad got them or how if we got them as a Christmas present or something, but we got a box set of VHS tapes, and it was episodes 4, 5, and 6, and episodes 1 and 2, because episode 3 had not come out at the time of Star Wars, which is such a weird set to sell. I feel like
Yeah.
let's
Right, yeah.
let's sell 5 of the 6, not include the sixth one, which is eventually
Right.
coming. But anyways, we got that as a Christmas present or something like that, and um, as also a part of the background of this story, my dad is something you have to know about my dad is that he's a huge fan of movies. I think that's a lot of the reason why I love movies. Is I get a lot of that from him, but at the same time, I think, and I I don't mean this as any sort of like subtle brag or anything against my dad, but I think I definitely understand and pay more attention to the details of movies than he does. As an example, and this will all kind of tie back into Star Wars, but as an example, growing up, we used to go to the premiere of every single Harry Potter movie together at midnight, right? And it was always like a thing, starting with I think like Prisoner of Azkaban. We would always go to the midnight premiere of every new Harry Potter showing, and and then I can just remember like talking to him about the movie the next day, and him being like, "Wait, who was that?" Like, and he doesn't remember anything about it. He's like, "That was great," and then you'll talk to him about it a week later. He's like, "I literally don't remember anything about the movie." So, okay, so you have to understand that that's kind of my dad's approach to movies, right? And so, um, I think maybe my uncle was in town too, and so we just got this box set of Star Wars movies, and I wish I could remember the process for why we chose the movie we chose to watch first. Um, because my dad, he went to the Star Wars movies when they came out. He said, I've talked to him about it before. He's like, yeah, I went to see it in '77 when before it was even called New Hope, when Star Wars came out, um, and so he went to see the original trilogy, and for some reason, to this day, it still bothers me that we chose this. For some reason, the first Star Wars movie out of the episodes 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6 box set that we chose to watch was episode 2. Now, let me just say, this is the least logical movie you should watch if you're in this scenario. Like, like why did we choose that one? Because it was the newest, maybe that was part of the reason.
Maybe.
But like my dad and I wouldn't have known that it was the newest, and my dad wouldn't have known because
Mhm.
like I said, the way
Didn't pay
he
attention anyway. Yeah.
yeah, and I was 6 or 7, so I didn't really have an idea
Yeah.
either. Um, but we watched this movie. I am in awe. I'm like, whoa, what is this? Um, the first the Geonosis scene. Gosh, I can't believe I'm like telling my story of Star Wars and its Attack of the Clones, but the Geonosis scene in that movie, I can like vividly remember as like, what am I watching? Like, I this is so cool. Um,
Right.
and, maybe the even more lame thing that really drove home the thing that probably grabbed me the most about that first experience of Star Wars, um, it was the scene where so it's the battle between Obi-Wan and Anakin and Dooku after Dooku has like tried to escape, and they're kind of beaten, and then Yoda walks in, and I just remember being like, oh, like is this about to happen? And the moment Yoda like does that battle yell like "Hurr!"
Yeah, yeah.
and then starts like flipping around the room, like I realize Attack of the Clones, it honestly amongst the original 6 movies, it's my least favorite to this day. But at the time, it was all I knew, and I was like, "Who is this green dude? Like, who looks insanely cool, flipping around the room, like battling this guy with the red lightsaber? Like, this is amazing." So, part of the reason to this day I think Yoda is still my favorite Jedi, um, is because of that moment in my life. I just was like in awe of what was going on. Um, and so all that to say, I think the next episode I watched was episode 1.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so I watched like 2, 1, 4, 5, 6, and I was thoroughly confused because I was 7. But
Yeah.
I remember not disliking any of them and just falling in love with it, and of course Darth Maul was cool in Phantom Menace, and then obviously you get to see who Vader is, and you're like, dang, this is incredible. So kind of lame story.
No,
Uh,
that's great.
episode 2 holds a special place in my heart.
And that's one of my favorite things about Star Wars is every generation has their Star Wars. You know, whether it is the original, whether it is the prequels or the sequels, or now this new era of TV shows, and you almost get just these answers. You just like I never would have thought it would have been episode 2 for you. You know? So
Yeah,
to know that that was your origin story just makes it even funnier to me, and also makes sense too as well. Because
yeah,
if I was 7 years old when that came out and I saw little Yoda jumping around like that, how do you? I mean, I watched that in the theater and I was freaking out when I saw Yoda do all that because you up until that point, you never seen Yoda fight.
yeah. You never seen him fight before.
Yeah,
Um,
so I had that building up to it. So yeah, I agree.
yeah,
Great,
and
great moment.
I would also add to this. This is kind of circling back to my dad that he had chosen to show me these movies, and me being like 7 or whatever at the time. I'm an oldest child, right? And so if you're an oldest child, you'll definitely resonate with this. But as the oldest, you are like you grow up in a much more strict environment than maybe you do if you have younger siblings than they do. Um, and so as a byproduct of that, my dad showing me Star Wars at the age of 7, my mom was like, "Why are you showing that to him?" You know what I mean?
You're right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, you
That's
know.
funny.
And so I just remember her getting upset at him after he showed me.
That's
But
hilarious.
I'm thankful for it to this day. And the ironic part is that if you lined up a cast of characters from that movie, he'd probably be able to name 2 of them. So,
Yeah, yeah, right.
um, shout out to Dad.
Yeah. What a story. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, well, I guess we'll move on to me. So my memory is I'm a bit older than you, Ben. So I had watched Return of the Jedi in the theaters.
Hmm.
So, and I was very young. To this day, I'm wondering how did they get me to go to a theater at that age? Because I was probably like 5 or something like that. I was real young.
Yeah.
To go watch Return of the Jedi in the theater. Um, I was the same way as you as far as just being mesmerized by what I was seeing. One, you're 5 years old, you just don't know a lot of what is to be seen in cinema. Um, but to see Luke with the green saber. I mean, you're seeing a hero. You're seeing a hero. A hero's tale. And Luke was my first like genuine hero growing up.
Mm.
When you see, and maybe I didn't understand all the ins and outs of the Empire and everything like that, but to see somebody that's taking their talents and doing good with it, that's what I always took away from early on Star Wars. And I remember going, and honestly, I don't remember much because you're 5, so there isn't really much to remember at that when you're so young.
Probably the
But I
experience
remember
more
that,
so, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, and I vividly remember, and this is kind of crazy. I vividly remember when Vader was defeated and they were essentially he was in the pyre basically, and he had his helmet on still, and so he was in the fire, and he was gone. That was that was my first experience with death.
Oh
That young.
wow.
Yeah, so like that's where I learned that concept and what it meant. Right there on in the theater. Kind of a weird thing. I look back and that's where I mean honestly it scared me a little bit because I'm like this is not okay. I know this is this is a crazy thing. So I know this is a crazy like origin story for a Star Wars, fan. But I vividly remember that and being like accepting of it, not totally scared of it, not totally um I did go check on my brothers and my parents a little bit more often, I will admit. But to have that knowledge so early, it was just a funny thing that to realize that that's what affected me. Um, with my one brother Jay, he was very much into Star Wars as well. So there was always kind of this bond that he and I had because of it. And he had this one figure. It was my favorite figure of them all. Um, it was the Lando Calrissian, the Skiff Guard one,
Yeah.
with the little helmet and the head of staff. And back then, that was huge to have like removable pieces, that you could. So I remember just playing with that Lando Calrissian figure hours on end, literally just popping the helmet off and on and jumping around. So those memories, that like having that, and fast forward till today, both me and my brother still do collect a lot of Star Wars like items, whether they're Funko Pops or figures, lightsabers, whatever. And I got my one buddy who is also very into collecting things as well. So, um, and it's part of the collecting mind, that me and my
Mhm.
brother do have. I mean, you could throw anything that we think is cool in front of us, like, oh, I want to collect it now. So, I mean, that probably is part of it. But that part of Star Wars, the merchandise and all that, has always made piqued my interest because of that first figure with the Lando Calrissian. Because I remember how fun it was to have that figure in the house, constantly playing with it, and to this day, it's just one of my favorites that I've ever had I've ever like played with when I was growing up. So just those like little things that I look back and I wonder what my parents would have said if like they knew like you're taking our youngest, I'm the youngest of four, our youngest son to go watch this movie where somebody essentially gets thrown into a fire at the end of it as when they're died. So it's the same question, but at the end of it, it's those memories. And like my brother took me to that showing, and there's just those memories that definitely stick with me throughout my Star Wars fandomness.
Yeah. That's cool. I really, related, especially what you said about Luke, where, you walk away watching that especially the sixth episode, um, just feeling like this is my hero, you know? And kind of, same thing with Han too, to an extent. I know
Hmm.
you're a big Han fan too. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
that yeah, I can really resonate with that because I think one of my biggest regrets about watching the prequels, or I guess two of the prequels before I watched the original trilogy, um, is that I wish I could have experienced that feeling without having seen the prequels. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because my first taste of Star Wars was like Anakin and Obi-Wan. So, and this goes back to what you say as well about kind of like everyone has a different Star Wars experience. Because that was my first experience, like um, probably Obi-Wan more so than Anakin actually became like that hero figure for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and actually Yoda to a certain extent as well, even though he's obviously not in the films as much as the other two are.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right.
but yeah, we especially as kids we really connect, um, and it goes beyond the bounds of the film and to the point where it's like, wow, that is like someone I want to be like in real life.
Right.
How do I get a
Exactly.
lightsaber?
Right. And growing up, who didn't take their the leftover tube from the paper towel
Oh yeah,
and use connect a few of those and make that a lightsaber. I mean,
yeah.
those were the thing. Those were our resources when we were like children. Like, all right, well, I can't make my own lightsaber. We didn't have Galaxy's Edge when we were growing up, so we couldn't make our own lightsabers. You just made do, and everyone knew that that was your thing. And yeah, it was just and the people that enjoyed Star Wars just really enjoyed Star Wars. Like like me, like my brother, like you, and your dad. Is it's just and that's the one of my favorites is when like families get involved with this stuff. When we when I see one of my favorite story. Okay, so I'm gonna go off of a tangent here a little bit, but because I just thought of family. So we went to Star Wars Celebration 2019 because it was here in Chicago, and there are pins, right, that you can collect. Disney has this like whole like pin trading like community essentially, where there different pins that you could have, based off different Star Wars movies and all that. At the convention, there was actually like convention exclusive pins that were there. They're character pins, so they were like little like enamel pins that just different characters like Han Solo, like Leia, like all of these people. But you could only get them at certain like shops there at the convention. So I went to go collect all of them because that's what I told you I do. So I had to go get all the pins for each of them. One of them was actually an Ahsoka pin, and
Oh,
the way you got that was you had to buy something at the Funko station. And I was lucky to get some Funkos there, and they essentially give you the pin for free if you buy buy a certain amount, whatever. So I got the Ahsoka one. I was super happy about it. Um, so I'm walking around and I put it on my lanyard. I'm one of these guys. I put it on the thing, just to kind of show it off, whatever. But like I said, part of the community is that you can trade with other people.
mm,
But obviously you got to like walk up to them and say, "Oh, hey, are you interested in trading this and all that, whatever." The Ahsoka one's a pretty sought after pin, as you would think, right? So I'm walking around and this mom and this daughter come up to me, and the mom the you could tell the daughter is like really like nervous about something, and the mom comes up to me and she says, "Oh, we were wondering if you would be interested in trading." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, let's I could trade something." And then the mom kind of like shoves the daughter in front of her, like, "Go ahead, ask him." She's probably about 11 or 12 years old, right? Like, go ahead and ask him. And I'm like, and then she's like, "Yeah, I was interested in the Ahsoka pin." And in my head, I'm like, "Well, I don't want to trade that one. This is the one that I want." But I take a quick glance at what she has, just Ahsoka all up and down her lanyard. So I'm like, I can't not, I can't not like trade this to this girl here.
mhm.
So then I'm like, all right, well, let's see what we have. And then so then the mom's like, oh, we have this Luke Skywalker one that was exclusive at this blah blah. I have no idea if it's true or not, but it's fine because I was gonna trade it with her anyway because it's about family. You could see that this was very
Yeah,
important to this girl, and I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Just here, you could take this, and if you could just tell the amount of excitement, that she's like, yes, I got one, because like I said, those were kind of hard to come by. People were paying $90 just to have that pin, you know.
wow,
Um, but I'm just like, I don't, whatever. It's just a pin. I get it. This girl really wants it. I'd rather her have it than someone who's gonna sell it for $90.
yeah,
So yeah, it's a, and that's why I kind of mentioned, circling back of like having the family involved with it, whether it's your dad or my brother, who this mom and this daughter. Star Wars is for everybody, and it's just so fun to see it um, bring families together, in the ways that it has. And much like I'm sure many fandoms have, but I'm not part of those fandoms. I'm part of the Star Wars one, and I've seen it time and time and again, generations being able to talk to each other like this common language of Star Wars.
That's cool, man. That you
Yeah.
probably gave that girl so much joy.
Yeah, and I believe so. I mean, that was one of the highlights of that. I mean, it was a fun weekend of all things Star Wars, but yeah, that was definitely a highlight for me to be able to be a part of that girl's that family's Star Wars experience.
That's awesome. What was the Funko Pop you got for the pin?
Okay, so there were exclusive Funko Pops as well that were only available at the convention. I think they only created a couple thousand. I don't remember how many. But the only way you were able to get them was through like this raffle
Hmm.
that you had to enter. So both obviously me and my brother were going to the celebration. So we both he doesn't really collect the Funko stuff, but I do. So he entered as well. He ends up winning the raffle. I don't. And he's like, "Do you want these?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I do. Just please give it." And he's like, "Yeah, I'll give you the email, and then you can just check in with it, whatever." So he sends me the email, and I check in. So the exclusives there were actually 8 of them. There was like 6 of them that were like in this um, blue chrome style, and so they were like Boba Fett, Leia, Chewie, a stormtrooper, Yoda, and Darth Vader. So those were the 6 that came with like the exclusives. Then there were 2 other ones that were because it was the 20th anniversary of Episode 1, I believe. So there was also like a Darth Maul and a Watto one as well. So I picked up those. So I picked up 8 Funkos for that. So they gave me that Ahsoka pin in addition to that.
Nice. I feel like Watto is the odd man out in that group of 8.
I mean, a little bit. Yeah, because you just got like you got Vader, you got Yoda, and then you got Watto.
Yeah,
But yeah, I wish it would have been like a Darth Maul and then like an Obi-Wan one. That would have been pretty cool
yeah,
if that was the or Qui-Gon or something.
yeah. Also, if anyone who's watching on YouTube doesn't know who Watto is, we'll throw a picture of him on the screen right now. But he's the guy
Yes.
who is like, "Hey, you wanna buy some credit? You wanna credit's no good out here." That guy.
Yeah, right, yeah. But no, it's always and these are stories that these are like typical stories of Star Wars. Like, if you go to the conventions, if you talk to anybody who, a bunch of people who enjoy Star Wars, you're gonna run into these kinds of fun stories.
Yeah,
And then you could relate with. I mean, you weren't even there, and you're like, "Oh, that's pretty cool," so,
yeah.
yeah.
We gotta go to a Star Wars convention together at some point. I feel
Oh
like
my
that would
God,
just
yes.
be that would be so much fun.
They
Um,
have like at like Celebration, they have like podcasters like have their own
do
like
they?
panels and stuff like that. Yeah,
We gotta
pretty
get
fun.
us one of those.
That's right.
Um, so I'm gonna kind of skip around on a question because I think it relates a little bit more to what we've talked about so far. So basically, the question, as I have it phrased, is: having been a Star Wars fan for the majority of our lives, do you view Star Wars any differently now than you did when you saw it as a kid? So maybe like stepping out of like when that first time you saw it was, and growing with Star Wars as more Star Wars content has been released. Has that affected how you see like the movies you first saw as when you were younger, but then B also just like Star Wars as a whole, has that affected that?
hmm Um, with me, I mean, the more, and we've talked about this before as well. The more content that we end up getting, the more full the experience of Star Wars becomes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and obviously, with our minds growing from 5 years old to our age is now, of course, it's going to develop. Things are going to pop out a little bit more. I mean, a lot of what I didn't see when I was younger compared to what I do see now was like imperialism,
Mm.
government, politics, that whole side of things. I really do focus up on now. because these are important things. These art is like this mirror to what we see in the real world a lot of the times.
Hmm.
So I think that's what we can observe now as elder statesman of Star Wars as I am now, but to see that and to understand those motivations, and even having like this podcast where we talk about these, each of these individuals, these characters, we're able to break it down a little bit more. I didn't really do that when I was younger. I didn't really
Right.
try to understand the motivations of a Lando, of a Luke, of Han, or anybody. It was just like these fun characters that have these droids that apparently can move stuff with their mind, So, and that was kind of it, you know. But to see how like the Senate is involved, and where the Jedi set in, in all of that as well, that was a big portion of the prequels,
Hmm.
was that setup of the breakdown of the government and how they had to, or how the Emperor really took over things. Um, in order to build the empire the way he did. So, um, to be able to see it from that scope now, and to see all of the content, like I said, the books, the comic books, the audio books, whatever. To see all that now, I just love it, because it's just like, well, I understand that. Like when we watched that Tales of the Jedi together,
Hmm.
when we saw a little bit more of Count Dooku, it was great, because you're just like, now
Yeah.
we see that slow, not even slow, but we see that very explicit, you know, kind of rebellion towards of the Jedi and what they were standing for at that time. And then of course the obvious turn at the end. But just to see all of that, and understanding that that's what these pieces, that's what these TV shows, these new movies or books or whatever, that's what it's filling in these gaps where
Hmm.
maybe you don't have time for a 3 hour movie to talk about. So we'll talk about it in here. So just the overall appreciation of that art form, I think has been a huge thing for me to experience Star Wars in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. Those the that new Star Wars content. Like I think we talked about this on another episode, but we were basically saying it's like the lost puzzle pieces that we knew they existed, but we just they just were never really there. And we could try to fill in the puzzle or fill in the blanks, but it was kind of up to
Hmm.
the imagination. And now they're like slowly giving us these puzzle pieces, and it's just like the most satisfying feeling of being able to step back and look at the puzzle now. It's pretty cool. Another thing I was gonna bring up with kind of a way that I think Star Wars. I mean, the politics thing was definitely one, and I was gonna mention that as well, and so I'm glad you brought it up. Um, but also, I think our perspectives on it is probably different because you had the fortune of being able to see the original trilogy before the prequels, which I didn't. I was not as fortunate, and so I think because you know as a
You could have, just let you know, you could
yeah,
have.
I could have, yeah. as as many longtime Star Wars fans know, or probably experienced, the general sentiment after Episode One was that dude with the two double bladed lightsaber was sick, but I hated the movie. I think that was a lot of people going out of Episode One. And the main sentiment, or the main reason behind that sentiment, was probably because of the political nature. I mean, you heard like all kinds of stuff, like why are we talking about trade routes, and who is this, Confederacy of Independent Systems, and why do we care, and how does this like, you know, it was hard to, I think, at the time to, because I looked at Episode One, um, and I've never had that same sense of animosity towards it, as I think a lot of people who saw the original trilogy first did, and maybe some still do. Although I think no shade at the sequels, but I think the sequels took a little bit of the heat off the prequels. Um, but yeah, that'd be something I'd be curious to, and maybe if not on this episode, then definitely again in the future. If we, I don't know if we would want to do a political Star Wars episode, but getting
most
the
most downvotes ever on a video.
thankfully YouTube doesn't show downvotes anymore on the political episode. but yeah, I think probably just the sentiment, even having seen the original trilogy first versus not seen it first, would very much influence your opinions on the political nature of the prequel trilogy, specifically Episode One. So that's also something worth noting. The other thing I was completely unrelated to that is I think Star Wars over time, the way I view um, good and bad or light and dark is very, very different. And a little bit of that is a credit to the content that they've come out with over the past decade or so. Because I think they've kind of branched out from like this, Jedi good, Sith bad, which is probably, I mean, that's the general sentiment of episodes. Really, well, all kind of the whole Skywalker trilogy, if you think about it. Um, they venture out here and there, and I appreciate when they do that. But I think, and part of it is age as well. But when you watch Star Wars as a kid, you're like, okay, Luke, Han, Leia, good guys. Like those are the ones we're rooting for. Come on, Luke, Han, and Leia. Obi-Wan, good guy. Let's go. And then you see like Darth Vader, like okay, clearly bad guy. Nothing redeemable. Emperor, awful dude. Like hopefully they lose. I want the good guys to win. And you operate from this very binary good and evil lens. And my favorite development, and this is kind of going to tie into my favorite Star Wars character as well, but my favorite development of Star Wars, specifically like the non movie content, like the Clone Wars and Rebels, especially those two, um, is the emphasis on everything isn't always black and white, and it's okay to operate within the gray. And even beyond that, like the gray characters, I think are the most enjoyable ones because rather than having a grounded or pre-placed sense of morality, you're almost like experiencing the journey with them and having to like go through this decision making process and really delve into what is the right thing to do. Um, and is it just to blindly follow this side or blindly follow that side? Usually it's somewhere in the middle. So, having said that, just to kind of tie into my favorite Star Wars character, I think that's why I love Ahsoka. And even before that, I loved Qui-Gon, but Ahsoka for me represents the pinnacle of Star Wars because not only is she a fun character, not only is she, you know, it's enjoyable to go along this journey with her in the Clone Wars, and now we get to experience her own show, and um, she's been in other pieces of like Rebels of Star Wars content too, but she just for me represents this evolution of binary black and white, good and evil, to here's someone who like really struggled with this decision, and ultimately still turned out great and is doing good things without being good from the uh, maybe the traditional Star Wars lens, if you will. So just the kind of the shift of light side, dark side, good and evil, and without going into a whole nother tangent of what is balance, that's maybe something we can talk about sometime too. But that was something I wanted to bring up and address as well. So
Yeah, and you know, since you talked about your favorite character, I'll go into mine, and for
mm-hmm.
the same reason as well. Um, as fun it is, as it's always good to have those like steady, where these people stand, where they supposedly stand. The Vaders, the Lukes, you have that, but then the people that operate just to manage, just to get through everything, through all of Star Wars. One of my favorite characters is Lando
Mm-hmm.
because he is there to survive at some points, and maybe he's a bit of a swindler, maybe he's had a bit of a past here and there, may not be exactly above board, but he's able to make do. I mean, he was the leader of a friggin' city, somehow, and just to know that he was able to get that status, to be able to work his way up into that, yeah, got the official title, was it for a Cloud City? I can't remember the official title he had there, but um he and just he was just so cool about everything, and I think that's when you see Luke, Leia, Han, Vader, the usuals that you see, you knew what they were going to do pretty much all the time. Maybe Han to some extent, you have no, he
He's a
shoots from the
wild
hip a
card.
little bit. He's a wild card too, so maybe him and Han, him and Lando definitely are in the same. You could talk about them in the same breath, but for those people that are completely on either side, you knew what they were going to do. With Lando, you never really knew. And that's what makes him interesting to me. You're just like, not quite sure where he's going to land. So when Solo came out and Donald Glover was cast as Lando, I was so excited. When I saw Lando back in Rise of Skywalker, Billy D. Williams, I was super excited for that. And I mean to have that diversity from the cast, everyone else in the cast was predominantly white. To have somebody who is diverse enough, we have a black male be able to hold his own within this time as well was a huge thing for me. Now we didn't have Asians running around Star Wars at that time, but now we do, which is incredible. So I'm excited to see that where that's going to end up. But that's kind of all I had back then to be able to see that diversity. So to see that's like who I could have been in the Star Wars world for a little while was Lando. I can't grow a mustache. I'm not as quite as cool and smooth as him, but he was definitely some. And I told you that figure that my brother had growing up with. I'm telling you, that was a huge part of why I enjoy the franchise so much. It was because of those toys, those figures,
Mhm.
and I mean, up till this day, whenever, so they do like a lot of re-releases of figures, and that was one of them that's been released like recently. So I'm like, oh, got to pick it up now too. So yeah, I definitely, it's yeah. So he's definitely one of my favorites in the franchise because of that. But just in the same breath, Ahsoka for me as well. I wasn't. I came in kind of late with the Clone Wars content. I started watching it after it was already done with season 6 or whatever. When it was on Netflix for that little while. So part of me feels like kind of like a poser because I'm like, yeah, I love Ahsoka, but I'm like, I wasn't there when she was kind of growing up in front of our eyes. I wasn't there when there was the big reveal of her on Rebels, and you talk about how when you were watching when you watch your first movie of Star Wars compared to when I did. Yeah, I had all of 4, 5, 6, with me, and to see the political side of things and how differently you and I look at it. That's the same thing that goes for like Clone Wars for me. Like I had like a good amount of time where I was not necessarily against Star Wars, but I wasn't like watching the Clone Wars. I didn't watch any of it, because I'm like it's just too much. The clones didn't really interest me all that much. It was prequel stuff after all, and I'm like I forget the prequel stuff.
Yeah.
But then my buddies was like, you gotta check this out. So I'm like, I'll check it out. And then to watch all of Clone Wars, to have caught up with the Rebels and everything like that, I'm like, man, if I would have seen Ahsoka in Rebels after watching like 6 seasons of her in Clone Wars, I would have totally freaked. I would have been like, oh my god, it's Ahsoka.
Yeah.
And so obviously I didn't have that moment. I didn't have that excitement because Clone Wars to me was, 2 months of binge watching, where it was for a lot of people it was years of investment into this character. So that's why I say like Star Wars is for everybody and it's different for everybody.
Yeah. It's funny. I think for a lot of people, the first time they discover Clone Wars, um, having those who are already previously Star Wars fans, it's such a funny feeling because you might go into it skeptical of it because it's an animated television show, but then you watch like 2 or 3 episodes and you're almost like upset at yourself that you hadn't watched it until this point. Because
It's
I mean,
exactly my experience.
I didn't start watching it probably until like season 3 was coming out. I want to say. I mean, this is a small spoiler, but I think the statute of limitations has passed on this spoiler. It's like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, I think it was season 2 or season 3 where they reveal Maul, and I was like, this changed my perspective on Star Wars. I know it made a lot of people upset too, but ultimately it turned out to be the right decision. I mean, the character is awesome, and they just
Yes.
it did so much for the show. Anyway, so that's the point where I kind of hopped into it, and then I just watched every season from there on out when it came out. And
Nice.
anyways,
That's incredible.
great stuff. Just not only movie content with Star Wars, but obviously with the past few years as well with the live action shows, but the animated shows. If you've never watched them, check them out. They're really fantastic. And as a side note, just a small brief tangent. If anyone hasn't seen Star Wars Visions, speaking of stuff I was skeptical of that blew my mind. There are a couple episodes. If you don't know what Star Wars Visions is, on Disney Plus, um, it's directors who it's all separate directors. These 9 mini episodes. They're each 15, 20 minutes long max. And there's just like completely separate stories in every episode. And if you have not watched them, they're all like inspired by anime more or less. And I've never in my life been more skeptical of something that I've ended up loving than Star Wars Visions. Watch the first episode, and if you're not hooked, it is such a good show. Anyways, sorry, I had to throw that in there. I If we're talking about a why we love Star Wars podcast,
Yeah. Oh
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
it's
yeah.
important to throw the stuff in there that really surprised us too. And for me, that was Visions. Um, okay, so one other thing I wanted to be sure we got in here. If you met someone who never in their life had, let's say they had never even heard of Star Wars, much less seen it, you get 1 to 2 sentences to give this person a pitch for why they should watch Star Wars, and maybe as like an extra piece of this question, the I'll add in the age old question like what movie or what order should you watch them?
Okay.
I don't even know what I would say honestly. Like
Mm.
if I'm only allowed 1 to 2 sentences, but I'd have to think
Right.
about it. Do you have an idea of what you would tell the
I
person?
would say my first sentence would be what?
How?
Sentence two. Sentence two would be do it. No, I'm just kidding.
Do it.
Do it.
Strike me down.
I mean, that's a tough ask. I mean, 1 to 2 sentences. I would definitely just go into. I can't do 1 to 2 sentences honestly. We are very long-winded here on this podcast. We know this. So 1 to 2 sentences is not happening. Um, I mean, I would just go into, like, what kind of movies and shows do they like, and a lot of that is probably have Star Wars probably has some influence on it. I mean that this is a cultural phenomenon. When we were growing up, and a lot of the things that came up, from it, or and I'm sure it pulled from other things. So it's a part of cinematic history. And to be able to experience it and understand it, and it's just I we could barely get we could barely talk about a 30-minute Andor episode within an hour.
Yeah.
We that's how much we talk about it. So to be 1 to 2 sentences here would be tough. So I think a lot of it would just be, um, you know, th- oh, gosh, there's just so much. I don't know. What would you say? I'm
I
not
mean,
sure yet.
it's almost, I think it's most tough because you're almost doing a disservice to the thing you love by trying to encapsulate all of it into a single breath.
Right.
Um, I mean, ultimately, I think whatever you say, it comes from a place of the fact that you have like fallen in love with this thing that really, in the grand scheme of things, um, like started as this idea from one dude's head, uh, almost 50 years ago, and now it's become this like massive hit success, and like cultural phenomenon, like you said, um, and I'm probably going more than 1 to 2 sentences, but I mean, you get everything from it. It's like an epic tale of good and evil, but also extends just beyond like the light and the dark, and you really get to explore the depths of um, of what is the right thing to do, and you get to go on these journeys with these characters, and you just like you fall in love with them, and it's really um, I wish I could think of a good word to use, but just almost overwhelming to the point where it's like anytime there's new Star Wars content, you feel like it's Christmas, honestly.
Yeah, yeah,
Like it is the coolest feeling to um have been, whether you've been a fan of the franchise for a day or you know more than 4 decades. It is the coolest feeling to be able to experience Star Wars in whatever context it may be, um, either for the first time or even again. Um, whether it's the 25th time I've seen Revenge of the Sith, or whether I'm watching Tales of the Jedi for the first time and having my mind blown. It's equally um, as entertaining and enjoyable, and it keeps us coming back because we love it. It's awesome. Star Wars. That that was my pitch, and it was definitely longer
that was
than
good.
two sentences.
That was
But
good.
uh,
That was good. Made me want to watch it again. Is what you did too.
yeah, what you're saying is we're staying up after the podcast and watching Attack of the Clones, right?
Yes. Let's go ahead and be like, we may just forward right to that fight though. Let's just do that.
You're telling me you want to skip over the first half of Attack of the Clones? What? I don't know, man. Django Fett, Camino.
Yeah, that's right.
um, for the sake of time, because we are trying to get into a new kind of habit or format of trying not to go over an hour if we can help it. I've got 3 trivia questions here for us. They are the title of the article is the 25 stuffest 25 toughest Star Wars trivia questions in any galaxy. So not only ours, but also the galaxy far, far away, presumably. I'm just gonna scroll to a random one and we'll answer it together. I think is we'll
All right.
maybe
Okay.
do 3 of them. All right, I'm
Yeah, let's
closing
do
my
three.
eyes. What do we get? Oops, I accidentally looked. I keep scrolling to the answers instead of the questions. Hold on, let me.
Cheater.
Okay, okay. Here's our first one. And if you're watching this along on YouTube, um, you can play along and try to guess some of the answers in the comments. Let us know how you did. Also, additionally, like back to the previous segment, throw your favorite Star Wars character down in the comments too. That's something I was also really curious to see what people would say in response to that question, and maybe if you want why that's your favorite Star Wars character. Okay, but back to the trivia. In which movie does the camera pan back up after the crawl? I feel like I've seen this as like a question before somewhere. In which movie? Oh, wait. Is this giving away the answer? It shows the picture of the crawl, and I don't know if it's the actual answer to what the question is. So, so I don't actually know if that's right, but I'm gonna refrain
Okay.
from answering just in case it is.
Okay. Okay. I feel like it's a prequel one for some reason, so I'm gonna go. But I couldn't tell you which one it would be. Um, I'm gonna go with episode 3.
Camera panning down. Camera panning down. I feel like usually there's like a huge star destroyer right after it. I'm
Yeah.
gonna. Ooh. Okay. I don't want to give an answer just in case the thing they showed is correct. Wait, what did you guess?
I said episode 3.
It's not 3. It's episode 2.
Oh,
Episode
again.
episode 2 is getting so much love this episode.
Yeah, we should just rename our podcast episode "Attack of the Clones." Why it is the best.
Yeah. Actually, we should just rename it Sand.
Sand.
All right, two more questions. What's our next one?
Okay. Okay.
What was the original name of the first Star Wars movie when it went into production? I feel like I know this. Isn't it? Oh, it's got something about the Wills. Um, it's
Guarding
like
the Wills.
I think it has like Luke Starkiller in the title. It's
Oh.
it's like
Um.
Luke Starkiller, Guardian of the Wills, or something like that.
Guardian. Luke Starkiller, Guarding the Wills, Electric Boogaloo.
Okay, I think no matter what it is, I think we get half a point for getting Wills in the title.
Yeah, I think
Maybe
so.
maybe Luke Starkiller wasn't in it. Let's see what it is. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Luke Starkiller is in the title.
Nice.
It's not Guardian of the Wills. It's Journal of the Wills. And the
Journal.
original complete working title, this would not have gone over well with like the movie corporations. Listen to how long this is. Adventures of Luke Starkiller, as taken from the Journal of the Wills, Saga 1, The Star Wars.
Sign me up.
I'll throw a picture on screen of the original movie poster. This thing looks pretty cool, actually. I'm not gonna lie.
Nice.
All right, third and final question. What do we got
We're
here?
doing really well, by the way. I'm just letting you know.
What did you say?
We're doing real well.
Yeah,
We're doing real well right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Sign us up.
I feel like I know this one too. What does AT-AT stand for? So if you don't know what an AT-AT is, that's
I should know this, but I don't fully know it. I know it's
the walkers on Hoth in the beginning of episode 5. I think it's
something
all-terrain.
All-terrain something transit?
Attack?
Attack transit? Attack transit?
All-terrain attack transport? That doesn't sound right.
Transport?
I'm fairly certain.
All-terrain is definitely correct, I think.
Yeah, because if you think about it, I think there's also ATSTs.
Mm-hmm.
All-terrain
strategic transport? I don't know.
Attack transport? Should we lock it in? I don't think that's right.
I don't think it's right either, but
look at us like saying we're Star Wars fans and why we love Star Wars, and we don't know what AT-AT stands for. All-terrain automated? No. I think it's attack.
No. I think it's
no. Assault? I think it's assault, actually.
I like assault. I do like assault.
All-terrain assault.
Assault transport.
Transport doesn't sound right to me.
Yeah.
Assault.
Traveler.
This is going to drive me nuts that we can't get this. I'm going to see it and be so upset, and I don't want to scroll down.
This is fine.
Okay. What are we locking in? All-terrain assault.
All-terrain assault.
Transport? I don't think that's right,
transport, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. It is. Oh, we were so close. It's all-terrain armored transports.
Armored.
What was our other guess? Not assault. It was attack.
Attack. Yeah.
Dang. We were 75% right.
Yeah, we were. Yeah, I mean, mainly right. Well, I could tell you which one it was.
Yeah.
If it was between that and a speeder bike, I would have known.
Yeah. If you enjoy these trivia questions, we might potentially throw some more into a couple of the next episodes.
Yeah.
Did we go 0-3 technically on that?
Yeah, 0-3. We're the best.
All right, Joey and I are going to study up before the next episode of the podcast. You heard it here.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, we're learning. I mean, even through all this, we could still learn more about Star Wars. That's what's so weird about it.
Well, fitting everything we love about Star Wars into a single hour would not be possible, but we attempted to. We tried our best. But Joey, you have any final thoughts on the Why We Love Star Wars episode?
Like I said, Star Wars for everybody. Generations, it crosses generations. It crosses against countries, genders, nationalities, everybody. There's a place for everybody. And I think that's what we got to remember. No gatekeeping here. This is, we enjoy having these conversations with everybody about it, and that's how it should be with Star Wars. That is what it all means to me.
Definitely. Yeah, we love having these conversations. We enjoy it. We love Star Wars, and we appreciate you for listening. We hope you would enjoy it too. Again, new episodes of the Hoth Hangout podcast come out every single Thursday morning. At 11 a.m. Eastern time. Is that correct? I think that's what time we release these.
I always forget. That sounds about right.
11 a.m. Eastern time on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Or if you want to watch the video version of the podcast, check it out over on the YouTube world. Hi, YouTube. We're closing in on 50 subscribers. So if you want to subscribe for free and support the channel over on YouTube, feel more than welcome and encouraged to do that. We would greatly appreciate it, friends. Again, if you ever want to get a hold of us or reach out to us with a question or just a comment, we're available over on Twitter at Hoth Hangout, or you can shoot us an email, hothhangout@gmail.com. I think that's about all we got. We really appreciate you listening to this episode. This was, again, a fun one for us because we love Star Wars. Bad Batch coming next month. Mando Season 3 coming in February. Next season of Visions coming in the spring. Ahsoka later in 2023, and The Acolyte in 2024. Lots to be excited about, including Lando, hopefully also coming in 2024. We'll see if we maybe get more info on that sometime soon. But again, appreciate y'all listening. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast. Joey, sign us off. What you got?
May the force be with you.
See y'all.